Hey guys, Darren Carr here, coach of Wise Ocean Pods, and welcome back to another episode of the club preview series on my channel. On today's episode, we were talking about the Collingwood Magpies, which I'll go ahead and say early on, I think these guys are probably one of the more irrelevant clubs in fantasy terms this year. I'm going to go ahead and say that pretty early. I'm looking through the list at the moment, and I just don't see a huge amount of opportunities in terms of fantasy. I think they've got their main stars that are going to continue to be very good. I'm just not seeing a huge amount of value when it comes to fantasy wise. So, um, yeah, let's get into today's video and talk about some players that you should be considering this preseason.
All the pain.
Good old Collingwood forever. They know how to play the game. Side by side they stick together to uphold the Magpies' name.
That song gives me headaches. I don't like Collingwood being very good, but that's my opinion. Anyways, Collingwood Magpies, obviously a very good club, but I really wanted to start off the top here and say that the Collingwood Magpies were the third worst fantasy friendly side of 2024. I've got the stats to prove it here. So in terms of points for, they just snuck into third last place there, just ahead of West Coast Eagles and the Tigers. Obviously, we know where they sort of finished up on the ladder at the very bottom. So it's quite unusual for a club that was pushing for finals and being quite competitive in most games, actually getting their hands on the ball, was not producing as much fantasy points for us. So that tells me that they are really not prioritizing handling the ball and getting those points for us. They're really just focusing on winning games, which I can't put against them. They're obviously the what's it called, reigning premiers of last year, and they're trying to defend their title. So their goal is to win at the end of the day. So they're not here to please us fantasy coaches. But that's just red flags for me from the get go that they're not willing to handle the ball as freely as some other clubs. So that already shows me that I'm not looking at something. I'm not looking them in the same light as I would look at another team that would happily throw the ball back a little bit more and have a bit more possession and allow those free flowing points. The other thing is Collingwood have a really hard run to start. I know I probably shouldn't look at that too early on, but looking at their run, obviously they have the opening round bye. That's already a big red flag for all their primos. So you're looking at your Dacos's. Even a Houston is really hard to look at when you're considering him after he was traded. But they go GWS, Port, Doggies. All three of them were very hard last year. Then you go into their bye in round 3, and then they go into Carlton, Swans, and Lions. So all of those teams are potentially top 8 teams for next year, or were pretty close last year, and all of them are considered as a hard team to score against, particularly in the midfield. So they have a pretty hard run to start off. So that already shows me that it's really, really tricky to make selections for them. But in terms of their overall direction, obviously they finished 9th last year, so in a bit of water pain after winning the premiership the year prior. I still probably have them sneaking into the 8 this year, just because I think they had a pretty injury-ridden 2024. You're thinking about the guys like Goey, Jamie Elliott, Tom Mitchell, and then you had a couple forwards in Mixed Day and Myercheck that were out for periods of their season. So I think with a bit more of a fit firing season from all their primos, I think they could definitely sneak into the finals there. Just looking at their best 22, and which again AFL produced, I probably pretty much agree with exactly what this is presenting. You're going to have Nick Dacos smack bang in the middle, then you have Josh Dacos and still slide up bottom on the wings there. The only problem I probably see is, do they continue with the Goey as a bit more of a inside mid, which we've seen in the past couple of years, or does he eventually get thrown a bit more forward with the likes of Jack Cripps coming back into the midfield mid part way through last season when he showed he was quite a good pick through midway through the season, but I'll get into him a bit more specifically later. Overall, their list hasn't really changed. Like you're looking at Dan Houston and Harry Perriman are the two inclusions. Besides that, there hasn't been too many changes. I think they're pretty much like for like. Obviously, they lost Johnny Noble. He went to Gold Coast, and the only other one they lost in terms of a trade was Joe Richards, who was only on the brink of coming into the Pie side anyway. So it's not really a huge loss for them. In terms of their other outs that they had Carmichael and Murphy retire. Besides that, they had a bunch of delistings in Bartel, Brigg, Airy, and Kruger as well. So, who all probably played their role in terms of being a bit fantasy relevant in the past couple of years. So the list is probably aging a little bit. They're starting to really renew a little bit. So, won't have to worry about those guys too much. In terms of the draft hand, they really didn't go to the draft with too much. Obviously, being up and about and obviously still thinking they can make finals, they went to the draft with pick 52, 50, and 58. I believe they traded up to like pick 47, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to focus too hard on those later picks. So those sort of things I'm not 100% looking into just yet. In terms of players that I'm really having on my watch list in this preseason, I think we'll start with Nick Dacos. You can't really go past him. He is a gun of the game, or just footy in general, and fantasy relevance. He is one of the more consistent players, I must say. He has only missed 4 games in his 3 seasons of playing AFL, which is incredible. And I think that was just due to a hamstring injury he had. So, pretty good track record. He's always been a fantasy relevant gun, and I think he's going to continue to be. I think we've probably seen the best of him, though. We saw back in 2023, he averaged 108.8. That was when he was sort of transitioning from that halfback role to a midfield role, so he sort of had the best of both worlds. He was able to go back, take a lot of cheap possessions, but now he's sort of in the guts and just being an absolute ball magnet and doing the best he can. I'd really like to see him improve his tackling numbers a little bit more to really take that next step and try and push that 110 barrier. Do I see that happening this year? I'm probably still a bit skeptical. Like I said, I think the Collingwood Magpies are really going to improve their game style to be a bit more point free flowing to really take that next step and allow their massive primos to really reach those heights. And in saying that, they'd also have to rely on Nick Dacos a lot more, just being that solo player to get that points. Just looking at his points per minute, it is under 1 at the moment, so definitely probably doesn't have quite the signs that he's going to be able to reach that 110 for me at this point in time. In saying that, though, he is the 20th ranked overall player in terms of fantasy average, and he was also the 12th ranked midfielder, so that makes it even harder for me to really select him, because he's not in that terms of 12th. He's not even in the calculations of being top 8. He's probably there or thereabouts, but again, I'm not seeing a huge amount of value from him to improve on his 2024. What else can I really say? I don't think his role is going to change. I think he's going to be this pure inside mid from now on. Like, if you just look at his numbers, he had a few periods throughout the year where his numbers just dropped, but overall, I think he's just going to be this 70 to 80% average all season next year. Again, he's probably the main tag target for most teams, just because he is so damaging when he goes forward or he goes back. He's just such an elite kick, so he's going to be the first one to get attention. So he's going to have those games where he drops very low scores. But because he's a champion of the champion of game, and he's still very young, he has to be on the watch list. If he looks like he's going to another level, then he's someone we have to consider. I think we've all had the luxury of owning him probably for the last 3 seasons now since his debut, and it would be hard to overlook him this early on in the preseason. Next person, no surprise, has to be Dan Houston after he made that trade from Port Adelaide to the Pies. And I touched base on him a little bit in the trade video, but I'm not a huge fan. I'll be honest. He has been very consistent at this sort of 90 92 to 94 range in the last 3 seasons. And I just don't see a way he's going to improve on that. He sort of had the luxury last year where he took the main kick-ins for Port Adelaide. I don't think he's going to have that luxury here at the Pies. I think they're going to continue sort of the way they were going. If you look at here, it's a very widespread in terms of their kick-ins. I think Jeremy Howe continues there. The only way I think he could improve is if Jeremy Howe spends more time forward. But I'm just not 100% sure if that's the case and if that's going to happen. You know, Darcy Moore's obviously going to stay back there. They've got Maynard, who takes a fair bit as well. The only way it happens for me is if they really tighten up on who's taking these kick-ins and, you know, we start to see, okay, they really prefer it in this guy's hands, not, you know, really sharing it around as much. So there's the potential that he's going to take that role, but unlikely for me to pay up for 94 points and nearly $1 million, you know. When you're looking, what was I going to say? When I'm thinking about what points he's going to take off other players, you think about Johnny Noble, who left and went to Gold Coast. So there are some points available in the back line. So Johnny Noble on averaged 75. So there's already 75 points of value that could potentially be shared amongst teammates or just go directly to Houston. Probably very similar in terms of their attributes and game style. So I definitely see him sort of slotting into that role. And the other factor when looking at Houston is Perryman. He's also coming to the side and slotting into that back line on the other side of the field. He's also going to be taking points out of that as well. So, like, how are they going to spread these times? Can they have, you know, when you're looking at averages of their just pure defense, you've got Cripps, who spends a bit of time back there. He's averaging 80. You have Noble obviously moved on, 75. You got Maynard's on 70. Jeremy Howe's on 65. How are we squeezing the likes of Houston and Perryman in there? And where are the points coming from? Are they taking points from a Maynard? Is he becoming more of just a lockdown defender? Like I said, is Jeremy Howe spending more time forward? You know, I just don't see a world where all these points are going to start to come to these players, and for all the same reasons that I spoke about, where Collingwood aren't this super fantasy friendly team, where they're going to be absolutely just chipping around the back, providing these switch mark kicks and getting those extra +6s for our players. So for those sort of reasons, he's on the watch list, but I'm pretty confident that his average is probably going to drop this year, and I'm pretty confident I could probably wipe him off the list. I'm just, again, it's a trade and we have to look at it. The next player I want to talk about is Jack Crisp. He went mega last year. He absolutely had a field day during the mid part of the year, which I could probably show you. So I think from round 8 onwards to probably round 12, he just went massive, and if he got on at the right time, he paid in dividends. And it was during the right time of the year as well, where it was during the buys, so you're relying on these players a lot more to really hit these ceiling scores. So he came in clutch. We saw him come into the CBAs a lot more during that period, look around 8 to about all the way through the end of the part of the season till it sort of dropped off in the end. So it's a bit hard of a one for me to say what it's going to happen in 2025. It sort of looked like that role sort of tailed out in the end for no real reason. Like, the goalie wasn't even playing at the time. Tom Mitchell was still injured it there. They sort of even favoured someone that I'll talk about a little bit later in Edward Allen, whether that was just a trial thing or something that they're going to do continuing forward. Also even throwing in likes of a side bottom in there, whether they thought that was his swan song and he was retiring at the end of the year or not, who knows. That's probably what I'm thinking when I look at these numbers. You give him a couple games in the midfield, throw a bit of experience in there. Potentially he was looking at retiring, but he has played on. So for me, I'm not super confident on Cripps, but for what he can do and what he's shown he could have done, if he continues this midfield role, you have to look at him. So he is priced at 83.1, so that's priced at 850k approximately. it's really just depending on what midfield role are they going to run. You got obviously Mitchell, who I'll speak about in a second. He's a little bit injured at the moment with that foot injury, I believe. So he's potentially having a delayed start to the season. Is De Goey fully fit, or is he going to play more forward? So Cripps could spend more time on the forward. But we're really looking for value. So Cripps, he presents value at the fact that he averaged 95 when he was in this role last. So if you look back at his numbers and you look at when he last sort of was playing as a pure midfielder, he averaged 95. And he has had seasons where he's even got over 100, but that was when he's sort of that half-backer. So I don't think those heights are sort of available, but there's every chance in the world that he takes a midfield spot and can have 12 points of value on him. Again, and probably another super consistent player. I think until last year, he had he didn't miss a game last year, or maybe it was the year before. He had like 160 or 170 games consistently played, so he went like 4 or 5 seasons where he just did not miss a game. He's just super consistent and doesn't have too many injury concerns. So he's one of those players you can fully expect just to play every game for all year. In terms of where I expect him to play, I probably expect him to go a bit more defensive, just with a few other players I think that may sneak into their side now. So that's where I probably won't start him at this time. Moving on to his teammate and Tom Mitchell, the ex-Hawk and the ex-Pig, I guess, if you want to call him that. He has had a tough run at it recently. But he presents massive value. So he is priced at 81, so 830k roughly. He has a 12% discount after only playing 6 games in 2024, sorry. And that's based on his average of 91, so that prices him down at 81, as I said. He already has an injury concern with a bit of I think it was a foot injury, so he's looking at a delayed start for 2025. So we'll have to see how that progresses. Again, we're still 3 months out from the first bounce, so there's still a lot to play out. His injury could come good, and he could still play round 1. So definitely still keep him in your watch list and see what happens, because we know what this guy can be. He's had some massive scores for us in the past. I'm not saying he's going to get to that ever again. I think those days are sort of done for him, but he can still definitely average well into the 90s for us. Just even looking at the games he played, the limited games he played last season, just looking at, I think, these sort of 5 here or 6 there, he averaged 94 over 4 games. So I think I only included these 3 because it was, again, round 1 was injured and round 7 was an injured game as well. So he's absolutely someone that we must consider if he is fully fit and can play. Simple as that. He is a pure mid, so he's going to plug up a midfield spot, but definitely one that we could consider. I won't spend too much time on this next person because I'm still quite skeptical on what's going to happen, but Harry Perryman definitely got traded from GWS to the Pies. He is priced down at 74 after averaging 74 last year. Played a full 21 games. I think he slots straight back into that defensive 50 role. I don't think he's going to be playing too much of a midfield role. I just don't see how they squeeze him in when you already, you just look at their breakdown. Yeah, you got Dacos, you got Pendlebury, you got De Goey, you got Mitchell, you got Cripps. And not to mention a few others that are trying to sneak in there as well, even a side bottom. And McCreary was spending a bit of time in there as well. So I just don't see a world where they're going to slot Perryman in there. I just don't think he has that ability to be that sort of person. In terms of Perryman's value, he has averaged 85 to 90 previously, back in GWS days, back in 2022. Where he averaged 86.5 quite consistently, 85 the year prior. So it does provide some value. It's just, again, where are these points coming from? Collingwood probably not the best team to really be going to when they are still pushing for finals. The Wolves probably going to spend more time in the forward line than not. So I'm just, again, skeptical that the points are there for him to have. So again, on the watch list, see how he performs in the preseason, but for me, I'm not super confident just yet. And to finish it off, I'll talk about one other person, which I won't go into too much detail about because there's still a lot to play out in terms of what this player is able to do. But that is Edward Allen. He only played the 2 games last year, which I can show you his scores. Where is he? Edward Allen. So he played 2 games. He played one in round 11 where he scored a 25, and then he finished off the season in round 24 with a massive 78 after getting a lot more CBAs. I can even show you that here. Had 0 CBAs in round 11, but had 65% CBAs in round 24. So he is definitely a mid, and if obviously when you play him outside of that role, he's not very good. But he is priced at 43, obviously with a discount, only playing 2 games. So off of his 56 average, he got that massive, I think, 24% discount. That prices him about 437k. Like I said, he was trialed in round 24 as a mid. So, and from what I've heard, and this was an interview with Nick Dacos, he is the player to watch in 2025. He is going massive. He is potentially the player that they are looking to bring in and be additional midfielder. He just brings a bigger body to them as well. So he is one I'm highly looking at. I think he's sort of moved ahead of McRae, so he is potentially maybe a risk of sub, but I think he's moved past McRae and the likes of a few others in there. So if there's some injuries, like I said about Tom Mitchell, if DeGoey goes down, he could definitely slot into that midfield role very nicely and provide us plenty of value. So he's a huge one on the list, and he's a pure midfielder, so he will clog up a bit of a midfield spot, but definitely one to watch. I think that sort of does it. I don't really have too many more comments on on Collingwood here. I did look at a few others, like Josh Dacos. Does he do anything different? Probably not. Isaac Quainer with, that backline, does he take a bit more of a role? I'm struggling to see it. Does Darcy Cameron take more of a load in the midfield? Probably unlikely. I thought Jordan DeGoey presented some value because he had a few struggles in 2024. But looking back at his stats, it really didn't affect him too much. Even the games where he didn't have a huge amount of CBAs, he still scored quite well. I think it was round 10, round 16, and round 21. So he still scored really well. And surprisingly, in the games where he had more higher CBAs, he was really inconsistent. Went from 28 to 135. Probably not one I'm super confident on relying on. And that was really about it. I'm not really too confident on what else there is. So I'm probably not going to be starting any pies at this stage, and none have made my team. So hopefully that you've learned something in this video, and I'll catch you guys for the next one. Catch you later.